You wake to the sound of artillery shaking the earth. Mud covers your uniform. Your boots are buried beneath the trench floor. Someone beside you is screaming for his mother. You cannot see the enemy. You only hear them. Another shell lands somewhere beyond the sandbags. The wooden walls tremble around you. Dirt falls across your helmet. Then everything suddenly becomes silent. You realize the silence is worse than the explosions, because now you are waiting for the next one. You grip your rifle with both hands. Your fingers are numb from the cold. Nobody tells you what happens next. You already know. The order will eventually come, and when it does, you will have to climb out into the open ground. You are a young British soldier on the Western Front. It is the First World War. Across northern France and Belgium, armies have become trapped in trenches. What began as a war of movement has turned into a brutal stalemate. Deep defensive lines stretch across the countryside. Sandbags protect the firing positions. Duckboards keep soldiers above the worst of the mud. Barbed wire covers the ground between the armies. That space is called no man's land. It separates you from the German trenches. Sometimes the enemy is only a few hundred yards away. You rarely see their faces. You mostly see smoke, helmets, and flashes of gunfire. You arrived here believing the war would be over quickly. Almost everyone had believed something similar. Instead, the trenches became your world. You sleep beside rifles, ammunition, mud, and frightened men. You eat when food reaches the trench. You sleep when the shelling becomes quiet. You learn quickly that quiet never lasts.
The trench smells of wet earth, smoke, sweat, and decay. Water collects at the bottom after heavy rain. Rats move through the darkness searching for scraps. Lice live inside uniforms and blankets. You scratch constantly. You cannot escape them. Nobody here can. Your biggest enemy is not always the soldier across the field. Sometimes it is the weather. Sometimes it is disease. Sometimes it is exhaustion. And sometimes it is your own mind. The artillery begins again. The sound grows louder, then closer, then louder still. You press yourself against the trench wall. A shell explodes nearby. The blast throws dirt across your face. For a moment, you cannot hear anything. Your ears ring. Your rifle slips from your hands. Then you hear your corporal shouting. You pick up the rifle. You check your ammunition. You check the man beside you. He is still alive. That is all you can do. At the front, survival becomes a collection of tiny decisions. Keep your head down. Keep your equipment dry. Watch the parapet. Listen for orders. Never waste ammunition, and never assume the quiet means safety. Your unit has been waiting for an attack. You know the Germans are watching you. Their machine guns can sweep the open ground in seconds. Crossing no man's land is almost impossible without cover. Yet armies still send men across it, because someone has to advance. The officer arrives before dawn. His face is strangely calm. He tells you the attack is coming. You look toward the ladder. Beyond it lies the battlefield. You suddenly understand something. The trench that protected you yesterday may become the place you leave behind today. You check your bayonet. You tighten your helmet. You think about home. Not the grand speeches, not the flags, just your mother's kitchen, your father's voice, the street where you grew up. For a few seconds, you are not a soldier. You are simply a young man who wants to go home. Then the whistle sounds.
You climb. Your boots hit the wooden step. Then the top of the trench. You are outside. The world becomes noise. Machine guns crack across no man's land. Artillery erupts behind you. Men are shouting everywhere. You run because everyone else is running. There is no heroic charge. There is only instinct. You stumble through the mud. Your boots become heavier with every step. The ground is torn apart by shell craters. Barbed wire blocks your path. You drop into a crater. Another soldier lands beside you. Neither of you speaks. You wait for the gunfire to ease. It does not. You look toward the enemy trench. It seems impossibly far away. Then an explosion throws mud over both of you. You crawl forward. Your rifle feels heavier than it did moments ago. The soldier beside you suddenly stops moving. You want to help him, but you cannot. The machine guns are still firing. You keep moving. You reach the barbed wire. Your hands shake as you search for a gap. There is almost nowhere to pass. You hear an officer shouting for everyone to advance. You climb through. Your uniform catches on the wire. You pull yourself free. The enemy trench is closer now, but so is the danger. You hear rifles firing from the parapet. You drop into another crater. For the first time, you realize you may not make it. You think about the promises you made before leaving home. You promised you would return. You promised you would write. You promised this war would not change you. But the person who climbed from that trench is already different. You wait. Then another whistle sounds. Your unit pushes forward. You climb again, and somehow you keep moving.
Eventually, the fighting moves beyond your position. You survive the attack. But survival does not feel like victory. The trench is still there. The mud is still there. The rats are still there. And tomorrow, you may be ordered to do it again. This was the reality for millions of soldiers on the Western Front. Trench warfare turned the First World War into a conflict of endurance. Soldiers faced artillery, machine guns, barbed wire, disease, exhaustion, and terrible weather. Some trenches were destroyed and rebuilt repeatedly. Others became permanent defensive positions. The battlefield changed little, but the men inside it changed forever. The war would continue until the armistice in 1918. Millions of soldiers would be killed or wounded, and countless survivors would return home carrying memories they could never completely leave behind. You came into the trench as a young soldier. You thought the war was something happening somewhere far away. Now you understand the truth. For you, the war was never a map. It was the trench beneath your feet, the mud on your uniform, the rifle in your hands, and the question you asked yourself every morning, will I make it home?